Hi, I'm Ruler of Time, and I'm not 100% certain on this, but I'm pretty sure that the first anime that I ever watched was Speed Racer. Before I had ever heard the word anime, let alone understood what distinguished it from any other form of animation, the Cartoon Network would air Speed Racer in syndication all throughout my early childhood. I didn't know it at the time, but this was already about 25 years after the series had first aired in the late 60s, not just in Japan, but also in America. Nowadays, Speed Racer seems to be remembered largely for two reasons: its catchy theme song, and the fact that it was seemingly funded with Monopoly money. I mean, most of the racing portions look okay, so long as you assume that everybody's driving calmly and conservatively without ever jockeying for position, but then you get to a scene where people are sitting around talking, and...
Don't waste time rebuilding it! What? You haven't heard the rest of my plans for the Mach 5. I've heard enough, Mr. Racer! How can you be against it when you haven't even heard the rest of the plan I worked on all year?
Well, it still would have been good enough for Hanna-Barbera. But let's go back to a time when the story of Speed Racer was told without animation. The story behind the creation of the franchise is surprisingly well documented. In 1966, Yoshida Tatsuo was inspired by a pair of popular films of the time, Viva Las Vegas and Goldfinger. Yoshida created the character of Mifune Go, with an appearance modeled after Elvis Presley, and driving a flashy race car packed to the brim with Bond-inspired gadgets. Mifune Go starred in the manga Mach Go Go Go, which Yoshida himself adapted into an anime series the following year. Before 1967 was over, Mach Go 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 was dubbed into English, and thus Speed Racer was born. Presumably the name Turbo McGoes Fast was already trademarked. The original manga is only 2 volumes long, and those 2 volumes have been re-released numerous times over the years. The character designs look simple and very cartoonish, but man, the racing scenes look nice. As I mentioned, Speed Racer was created nearly 50 years ago, so it's to be expected that certain parts of it haven't aged well. The protagonist's actual given name is Speed, for crying out loud, and his little brother Sprittle's best friend is a chimpanzee who dresses just like him. For the most part, basic oddities like this are pretty easy to accept and move on from, but occasionally you'll come across something that will still make you do a double take. For example, in the first story of the series, a shady organization is trying to steal the new engine design that Pops Racer is working on. After fighting off the most obvious thief in the world, Pops not only reveals that he has drawn the blueprints on a windshield in the garage in invisible ink, but loudly announces this when not even 10 seconds have gone by since the thief got away.
But even if he did know that, there's no way he could get into the garage unless he had a key, which he'll never find beneath the welcome mat. And even if he did get in, he'd trigger the security system, which he'd have to disable by entering the code 27934.
With that said, Speed Racer still holds up for the most part. It's a little disorienting to follow the older art style, but action sequences still come across very well, whether it's a tense racing scene or a fist fight. The manga also isn't afraid to go really dark. Racers fall to their deaths in bottomless abysses, cars explode due to fuel leaks, and it seems like everywhere he goes, somebody somewhere is trying to kill Speed. Somehow it all fits together really well in this larger-than-life world that Speed lives in. Speed himself isn't an incredibly deep character, but he's still pretty good as an archetypical young adventure hero. And of course, who could forget Racer X, Speed's mysterious masked rival? Overall, the manga is a lot of fun to look back on, especially when you recognize the influence it's had on other series throughout the last few decades. So for as cheesy as it is, Speed Racer is still fun and entertaining after all these years. And being the internationally recognized franchise that it is, it was really just a matter of time before somebody in Hollywood decided that they could make some money off of it. The Speed Racer movie was created in 2008 by Andy and Larry, now Lana, Wachowski. The Wachowskis, of course, are best known for creating the Matrix trilogy, as well as the film adaptation of Alan Moore's V for Vendetta. All 4 movies were tremendous financial successes, and were for the most part critical successes as well. Again, for the most part. The challenge for the Wachowskis would be in adapting to a very different genre of film, and expanding to a very different audience than they usually cater to. Speed Racer was the first family film created by the Wachowskis, and in fact their first and so far only to receive an MPAA rating under an R. I bring this up now because the Wachowskis wrote, directed, and produced the film, giving themselves a lot of creative control over the project without having a lot of experience in making family films. So you can kind of see where things might go wrong. And they did. Let's take a look. The film opens with Speed in a locker room mentally preparing himself for a race. But before we get to see that, we immediately enter a flashback to Speed's childhood. Apparently he struggled in school because he was constantly fantasizing about racing, which is understandably of great concern to his teacher.
All he talks about, all he seems capable of thinking about, is automobile racing. Is your husband's name Rex?
No, that's his older brother, Rex. Why?
This is the test he turned in last week.
Rex is a professional racer, Speed's hero, and a terrible older brother, seeing as how the first thing he does once he picks Speed up from school is to take them out to the test track and let his 10-year-old brother take the super fast vehicle for a spin.
But if you roll us again, this will be the last time.
If you flip the car and we die, this will be the last time I take you. That's not so much a threat as an observation.
The car's a living, breathing thing, and she's alive. You can feel her talking to you, telling you what she wants, what she needs. All you gotta do is listen.
This will be important later, even though the way he's explaining it makes no damn sense. At this point, the flashback ends and we cut back to an older Speed, played by Emil Hirsch, staring at a picture of Rex. This would be a simple hint that something bad happened to his older brother, except that we'll have it spelled out in excruciating detail over the next 10 minutes. As Speed races, his family watches from the bleachers. Pops, played by John Goodman, Mom, played by Susan Sarandon, Speed's girlfriend Trixie, played by Christina Ricci, his younger brother Spritle, and Sprite's pet chimpanzee, Chim Chim. As Speed takes a commanding lead, his mechanic knows that Speed is close to beating the track record, which is currently held by Rex. Every single person in the arena seems to take this as a sign to start talking about Rex, including the commentators, who talk in exactly the way that sportscasters don't.
No one from these parts will ever forget the tragic story of Rex Racer.
Let us hope he does not make the same mistakes that his brother made.
For 5 years, Rex Racer took orders from the criminal underworld.
He nearly ruined racing.
One of the bravest men to ever drive a race car.
It's true that sportscasters are expected to provide a bit of context to viewers so that they understand the significance of something that's going on within an event, but not at the expense of talking about the event itself going on in the present, especially if you're bringing up things in the past that are unpleasant to recall. If a running back surpasses a mark set by O.J. Simpson, you should not spend the next several minutes talking about the murder trials. So here's the gist of what we learned from all the flashbacks and these talking heads floating across the screen, which are really annoying, by the way. Rex is considered one of the greatest drivers ever, but because of his fame and notoriety, he was being marked for death by shady organizations, up until he left home without warning after a disagreement with Pops. For years after that, Rex was a dirty driver who supposedly was paid by criminals to wreck his opponent's cars. Speed was the only one who refused to believe the charges against his brother, but eventually it didn't matter because he died in a crash. Back in the present, Speed nearly beats Rex's track record, but decides to let up on the gas just enough so that he finishes a split second slower. Why? Never really explained. I believe this is meant to be a sign that Speed has the capacity to surpass his brother, but doesn't yet have the resolve to do so. Anyway, he still wins the race by a wide margin, and the next day,
Hey, what are you two doing?
desperately trying to maintain the attention of children watching this. This is a sign of the first major problem the film has. Random shit is stuck all over it in order to appeal to younger kids. Spritle and Chim Chim seem to be there solely to provide these bizarre non sequitur scenes so that any kids who start to grow bored with all the slow, tedious exposition will get sucked back into it. This becomes a real problem later, but we'll get to that shortly. All throughout the day, the racer household receives calls from various companies who witness Speed's big victory and want to sign him to a deal. Eventually, one suitor simply arrives in person, E.P. Arnold Royalton, played by Roger Allam, who deserves every award on the planet for making this movie awesome whenever he is on screen. The racer family at first tries to reject Royalton's offer, but by sheer charisma he manages to convince them to come to Royalton Industries so he can make a proper pitch. I do give the movie credit for this sequence, not for all the half-baked computer effects going on in the background, but rather the way the characters are interacting. Royalton pretty quickly comes off as a villain, but he really does do a convincing job of trying to woo the racers into a deal. He's kind to them in every respect, he gives them time to think things over instead of trying to forcefully rush them into signing something, he listens to their concerns and promises to address them, and in general, he seems like he really would prefer things to go the easy way between them. This makes things a little weird when the deal falls apart and things turn sour incredibly quickly, but for now I like that the evil rich businessman character is actually acting like he has good business sense. Speed asks for some more time to think over his decision, and Royalton agrees to give him some space. We cut to some gangsters beating up Teijo Togokan, a young racer who hasn't lived up to his end of a deal with them. They're about to feed his hands to a bunch of piranha when suddenly Racer X arrives, revealing that the office is actually in the back of a truck. Because. Racer X rescues Taejo and offers to help him in taking down the criminals, but the two have a difference in ideals and quickly part ways, but not before Racer X provides his contact information. Meanwhile, Speed contemplates signing with Royalton, taking a bit of time to discuss the idea with Trixie before returning to announce his decision. But before we get to that, we cut to these two 4 times during Speed and Royalton's conversation, which may well be the most important conversation in the film, seeing as how it sets up the main conflict. And why? Because Sprite and Chim Chim want the candy that was on the plane that initially took them to Royalton Industries. Why is this in the movie? Because Speed and Royalton are talking about boring adult stuff that kids don't care about. Show them the chimp and the kid psychic again! Anyway, Speed explains that while he really appreciates Royalton's offer, he has to turn it down.
It isn't just a sport. It's way more important than that. It's like a religion. And in our house, the major sponsors are kind of like the devil.
Why? No, seriously, why? I mean, Royalton himself in just a few seconds is going to provide a really good reason to think he's the devil, but why does Speed's family think that already? I mean, sure, corporate sponsors might be evil, but they keep most professional sports running. And of all the ones that you could have chosen to take an anti-corporate stance in, you chose the one that requires its participants to drive billboards on wheels? That's like being a professional baseball player and saying we shouldn't chop down trees to make bats.
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that load of sickening schmaltz, and I'm going to give you a bit of an education. At the end of it, if you're smart, you'll thank me, and then you'll sign that contract.
Damn it, movie, I'm trying to show the important parts. Royalton tells Speed that racing as he knows it is a lie. Corporations have determined the result of every major race of the past several decades in order to manipulate the stock values of their own companies, turning massive profits in the process.
That's what racing is about. It has nothing to do with cars or drivers. All that matters is power and the unassailable might of money.
Stop doing that! You see what I'm saying here? This is really important stuff. Royalton's revealed himself as the villain, Speed's entire belief system is cast into doubt, and yet most kids probably don't care. No kid is going to care about stocks rising 6 points or falling 4 points and the deals that the CEOs brokered to twist those differences to their advantage, so the Wachowskis decided that instead of just, I don't know, not having that be in the film, to keep it in there and then jangle some keys around it, which does nothing to improve the scene for kids, it just flat out ruins whatever appeal it had for anyone else. There's a weird sequence where the movie starts cutting back and forth between Royalton saying what he's going to do to Speed and his family now, then cutting forward to show it happening, then cutting back to the conversation. Presumably this is to save time because the film's over 2 hours long as it is. Eventually a security guard arrives with Sprite and Chim Chim in tow, and Royalton kicks them all out.
I'll see you in Fuji.
Yes. And then you'll find out you just made the biggest mistake of your life!
Wait a second, did he just... He's flipping him off! Spritle, the youngest character in the film, the one the kids will most likely be paying attention to, just flipped the bird to the camera. Why would you do that? At Fuji, Speed's car is wrecked by an illegal side clamp device, causing him to lose exactly how Royalton said he would. Later, Speed briefly speaks with Ben Burns, who years ago won a classic race that according to Royalton was fixed. Speed asks Burns right out if he cheated, which he basically admits. On top of this, under Royalton's influence, Pop's Racers company is sued, and Speed is accused of being a dirty driver just as Rex was. At their lowest point, the Racers receive a visit from Racer X and a government agent who are looking to expose Royalton's corruption. The two of them have made a deal with Taejo Togokan, who has promised to provide evidence against Royalton that he obtained while working with his thugs.
Which could put both of them behind bars for the rest of their lives. The problem is, he won't give us the file unless we help him stop the takeover of his family's company.
In exchange, he wants to form a team with Racer X and Speed to help him win a cross-country rally, which will drive up the stock of his father's company. Pops refuses to allow Speed to join the team, as Rex perished on the very same course. Naturally, Speed chooses to go anyway, and Trixie goes with him to act as a spotter from her helicopter. The Togokan company performs several modifications of the Mach 5, installing all the signature gadgets from the show. Then there's the first leg of the rally, nothing really important happens, so this is as good a time as any to talk about how this movie looks. Everything about this film looks wrong. Every background, every vehicle, every single computer-generated effect looks wrong. The movie tries really hard at times to appear very cartoonish, and that's not bad necessarily, but the way it ends up combining with the live actors, something just looks off about it. It's hard to explain, and I know that this can be done properly, but it isn't here. It's impossible to watch any racing scene without thinking to yourself constantly, this isn't real, this isn't happening. The way that things appear prevents you from becoming immersed in the film. And it doesn't help that the cars are constantly doing weird things like tossing beehives at each other, where the people's faces keep fucking drifting across the screen. Stop it! I really cannot stress how annoying that is. It feels like there's something sneaking into your field of vision to surprise you while you're focusing on something else. Anyway, Speed and his teammates finish the first leg of the rally. Back at the hotel they're staying at, Speed confides in Trixie that he suspects that Racer X is really his brother.
But Speed, we buried Rex.
The body was buried. Remember, it had already been badly burned in the crash. Even if it was Rex, no one could have recognized him.
So the police didn't take DNA samples, check the teeth against dental records, do anything to help identify it? How convenient. The conversation is interrupted when the Racer family arrives, leading to Speed and Pops arguing over his remaining on the team. Eventually, Speed's mother realizes that they really can't force Speed to return home, and she instead convinces Pops that they should stay with him to help. That night, while everyone's asleep, they are all attacked by ninja. When one of them goes after Racer X, he's prepared for it and a fight breaks out. Wait. He used his shirt to cover the exact portions of his face that his normal mask doesn't cover. Okay. Now, apparently in addition to failing stealth class, these ninja are absolutely terrible at all forms of combat, too. The one sent after Speed eventually ends up getting pantsed by Spritle before Pops arrives and just beats him up for a solid minute. Once everybody's safe, Teijo's sister, Haruko, tells them that he's been poisoned. Fortunately, the poison isn't lethal and he should recover sometime the next day, but not in time to begin the next leg of the rally. We cut to the next day with the race in progress. The head gangster after Teijo has stowed aboard Haruko's transport and takes her hostage at gunpoint, only to discover that Teijo is in her place. It is then revealed that Haruko is safely up in Trixie's helicopter, while Trixie has taken Teijo's place in the race. Alright. 1. Teijo is not fit to drive, but he can easily dispatch a man with a gun. 2. How did Trixie pass for Teijo at the start of the race? Did they just not check to see that the right people were in the cars? 3. How did they know Haruko was going to be targeted? 4. If they did know Haruko was going to be targeted, why have Teijo disguise himself as her? Why not just have him up in Trixie's helicopter? 5. How is Trixie suddenly qualified to compete in a professional race?
You're the ones who were saying I'm a better driver than most of the WRL.
Well, that answers one of those questions in the laziest way possible. The race continues in this manner up until they reach a stopping point where Teijo can take over for Trixie. However, the remaining gangsters show up and hold everyone at gunpoint. Just as they're about to unmask Racer X, Spritle and Chim Chim come out for their hiding spot in the trunk of the Mach 5. Cue poop joke. Wonderful. Another comedic fight breaks out, and once all the gangsters are subdued, they resume the race. After Speed has an extended duel with the frontrunner, Team Togokan wins the race. However, Teijo fails to provide the evidence he promised.
All he wanted was our help to drive up the stock in his family business. Even if he had a file, he had no intention of turning it over.
Speed goes to the test track to vent his anger, and Racer X soon arrives afterward. Speed accuses Racer X of being his brother, citing their similar driving styles and the fact that X knew where to find him. However, when Racer X unmasks, Speed is disappointed to see that his suspicions were wrong. X tries to offer Speed some encouragement, suggesting that Rex will be proud of Speed for having taken a stand and trying to change the sport of racing for the better.
Racing hasn't changed and it never will.
It doesn't matter if racing never changes. What matters is if we let racing change us. You don't climb into a T-180 to be a driver. You do it because you're driven.
When you turn the wheel, you're not steering the car, you're steering yourself in the right direction. When you stop at a gas station, you're not refueling the car, you're refueling your own resolve. When you can balance a tack hammer on your head, you can head off your opponents with a balanced attack.
If you know so much, why don't you tell me why I should keep driving?
Sorry. That's for you to figure out.
Speed decides that just like Rex, he needs to leave home so that he can continue fighting without endangering his family. How this would prevent Royalton from targeting his family anyway, I have no idea. Before he can leave, Pop stops Speed, refusing to make the same mistake that cost him his first son. They have a fairly long discussion about how Rex's death affected them, how proud Pops is of Speed, and eventually the corruption of the sport.
They've known the winner of every Grand Prix for the past 50 years. It's always fixed.
The Grand Prix? A sham?
Next you'll be telling me that wrestling is fake. At that moment, Haruko arrives to offer an apology for Teijo's betrayal. In order to make amends, she offers Speed the invitation to the Grand Prix that her brother received for winning the cross-country rally. As a member of the winning team, the invitation will be valid if Speed presents it at the race.
We don't have a car.
Yes you do. Speed was driving it at the test track like an hour ago. What's wrong with that one? Oh, okay. It's an excuse to have a montage of the family making a new car. Fine. The racers finish the new car, the Mach 6, just in time for Speed to barely make it to the race. Royalton places $1 million bounty on Speed's head, and seemingly every other driver in the competition spends the whole race trying to knock him out. Speed is able to fend them off and eventually starts dueling with Royalton's top competitor, a legendary driver named Cannonball Taylor. Speed gets the better of Cannonball up until he hooks their cars together, using the same side clamp device that wrecked the Mach 5 at Fuji. Just when it seems that Speed's going to lose, he manages to leap both cars through the air and turn their undersides to the camera, exposing the device. The two cars fall apart in midair, and while the Mach 6 is still intact, it's completely stalled. But fortunately, Speed remembers the advice that Rex gave him way back at the start of the film, and listens to the Mach 6 so that he knows exactly what he needs to do to jumpstart it. Because that's how cars work! Apparently jumpstarting your car in the middle of a race gives you a massive speed boost too. And while he's making his big comeback, Speed remembers every important conversation he's had throughout the entire film. Talking with his family, talking with Racer X, talking with Trixie, talking with Royalton. We revisit all of these conversations, because apparently nobody could come up with a fitting climax for this film, so they just replayed a bunch of scenes over again to make it seem like this moment is meaningful. So Speed wins in a gigantic flash of colors, and everybody's happy. No, seriously. Everybody's happy. Obviously, Royalton is furious, but literally every other person we see reacting to Speed's victory is really happy with it, even in the case of characters where it doesn't make sense. For some reason, Teijo's happy that the guy he left high and dry just won, but even weirder than that, Ben Burns has been doing color commentary for the entire race and has been actively rooting for Speed to win. So, are we supposed to think these guys are good now? They're just as corrupt and greedy as Royalton, shouldn't they be subject to the same scorn?
Cannonball clearly using a spearhook. That could cost him the Hall of Fame.
Not to mention what it might do to Royalton Industries. Shame on them.
You admitted to cheating in the most famous race of all time. What gives you the moral authority to say that? Speaking of journalists, every single one of them at this event is rooting for Speed too. Not a single one is a neutral observer. Along with that, Speed appears to have the unanimous support of the crowd. I get that this guy's been making waves recently, but how is it that he's this popular? Even if we assume that Royalton's smear campaign against him has been completely ineffective, Speed was a late entry into the race. Surely most of the thousands of people there must have wanted somebody else to win. And what about all that crap Royalton was saying about the race being fixed? Who was supposed to win? Was that just a lie? If so, why establish that previous Grand Prix have been fixed? God, could this ending get any more confusing? Racer X looks on from his skybox as Speed celebrates with his family. We then go through one final flashback that establishes that Speed's suspicions were right all along. Racer X is Rex Racer after all. After faking his own death, he got facial reconstruction surgery so that he could continue battling corruption in the racing league without endangering his family. That makes a level of sense, but then why does he wear the mask?
Why does he always wear that mask?
If any of you actually knew his identity, you'd become targets for his enemies, which include some of the most vicious fixers in the world.
No! That doesn't make sense! He doesn't look like anyone. He has no secrets that a mask can protect anymore. And if the reason he's wearing it is so that he can protect the people that he associates with when he's not wearing the mask, then why did he go to see his own family while still wearing the mask? Celebration with the trophy, dumb joke by Spritle, Speed kisses Trixie, roll credits while the chimpanzee makes faces. This movie is confused. The plot holes alone would be enough of a detriment to the movie, but more importantly, Speed Racer is a film that does not seem to know what it should be. It wants to be a film that will entertain the whole family, but it has a sense of humor aimed exclusively at very young kids, while employing foul language and adult cynicism. So, only really young kids will get the most out of this movie, but no parent should want their kids to watch this. On top of that, the visuals are constantly disorienting. I will give the Wachowskis credit for giving Speed Racer a unique look. The graphics and editing really grab your attention because of just how different they are, even if it's in a bad way. The film definitely doesn't achieve the same balanced appeal of the original. Other than Allam's excellent performance in the first hour, I found nothing enjoyable in the film, which is disappointing when you consider the iconic status of this franchise. Even though I chalk up Speed Racer's failure to the filmmaker's inexperience rather than a lack of ability, it is nonetheless a failure. I'm Y Ruler of Time, thanks for watching. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go see if my car has anything to say to me.
Bahagon!
とボディマッハの負けに魂親譲り走り出し